Welcome to the B Shifter podcast. Today, you've got John Vance here along with Chris Stewart and Josh Blum, and we have a few topics going. We have some audio coming up from an incident in Lincoln, Nebraska that we'll be playing the audio and then having some commentary on the audio. Really good stuff, really great blue card execution, and a lot of moving pieces and parts to that. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Josh, it's good to see you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be on here with you all. This 3-hour time difference is a little challenge for us with you guys being in Phoenix and me being in Cincinnati, but yeah, it's all good.
Thanks for staying up late.
It's late and windy in Cincinnati. Huh?
Yeah. Well, we just wrapped up a class here today, and when we do that, we get on and do a podcast afterwards. So that's why we're a little later in the day as far as our taping time goes. We are going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio at the end of September, beginning of August, or October rather, for the Blue Card Hazard Zone Conference. We are very, very excited about that. We've got some great classes coming to that conference this year, as well as 5 pre-conference workshops. You can go to bshifter.com to find out more, get your course descriptions, especially with the workshops on there right now. We'll be filling in more information in the coming days on some of our instructors, but we have, what is it, like 23 unique classes this year?
Yeah, at least I think 23 or more unique classes with, quite a change up from the first 2 years as far as what classes are being presented and presenters, additional presenters. So, super happy to get John Cirillo back to our conferences. He was coming to them for a long time. South Bend, I think he came to 1 or 2 in Phoenix that we did. And it wasn't for any other reason that we weren't doing conferences. And then when we started him back up, he just couldn't make his schedule work. But I jumped right on him last year, right after the conference ended, and got him on board. So looking forward to that. He's going to do a general session and a couple breakouts and talk about some events with wind-driven events, not necessarily high-rise events, but wind-driven events that they've had at the FDNY, and then talk about some other fire science and flow path stuff as he always does so well. Very well-respected company officer and really the guy, I think, on wind-driven events. Him and a few of his colleagues, when they put all of that stuff together, really focused on high-rise, but wind blows at every level, so I'm super excited about that. And then we got Dan coming back again this year, and I think this will be that he will be pretty sure he's been at every conference that we've done. So super excited about that, and he's changed up and got some new things that he's going to talk about. He's doing a general session and a couple of breakouts. His breakout session is going to be I'm most excited about, really, because he's going to really try to talk and tie together some thinking on the fire ground and tie together fire dynamics, building construction, PPE, and our tactics. So I'm not sure how he's going to ever get through that in an hour and 15 minutes or so, but regardless, it'll be excellent, and there'll be a lot of takeaways from that. So and then we got Shane coming back from NFSA. He's going to do a general session. He's got some new things to talk about with a lot of stuff they've learned in, the last 5 months since the conference with EV fires and sprinkler systems. And we're looking forward to hanging out with him and catching up. And Chris and I actually be spending some time with him next week here in Cincinnati at a big box class. That's going to be a good one because we got a local fire department just had a fire in a very large Amazon distribution center that was totally contained by 2 sprinkler heads, and so that'll be nice to talk about here while he's here, and the folks from that local jurisdiction to get to talk to him about their experience there. So other than that, all the breakouts, and like you said, John, the website's up from the website for the conference is up from our new website, which, super exciting too. I love the way that looks. It gets better every single day, more and more moving parts and much more interactive. So I know we're adding every day more and more information about the conference as far as the specific topics of instructors, but you can register now, and you can see everybody who's teaching. We're just starting to add some more information on their bios and specific class description. And you can also find the conference hotel room rates there and the other events that we're going to be doing during that week. So yeah, it's hard to believe, but really it's not that far away.
So sign up, get your room. The room blocks are being held right now, and they ran out last year. So make your reservation now and commit to being with us September 29th through October 3rd at the Sharonville Convention Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. Really great place to have a conference, great venue, inexpensive. It's a lot of learning for not a lot of money. So, and we also have a little event on Thursday night. We invite everybody over to have a little networking and social time with one another. Plus, lunches are included for the fee, along with snacks. So, it's really a great value for a conference. So we've got Chris here, and Chris is also going to be at FDIC with us. So we might as well just plug our booth there. We're going to be in the Hoosier Corridor. If you want to come by and talk to any of us with Blue Card, it's a great opportunity to ask those questions, especially if you've got a fire chief or an ops chief or somebody that you know maybe has some misconceptions or want to get more information on Blue Card and what we're doing as far as command education goes. See us in the Hoosier Corridor. Stop by, say hi. And we're also scheduling some appointments for Eric. Since Eric's not here and not able to speak for himself, we're going to schedule those appointments right now.
As we should.
Yeah. No, seriously, we've got a time with Eric Phillips, and Eric has put together our after action review module, which is available to Blue Card instructors. And if you want some one-on-one 15 minutes or so with Eric, drop us a line. We'll schedule an appointment so you can have a dedicated person talking to you one-on-one about the after action module and how that works.
He's been so popular with After Action Model. Josh and I now have to actually schedule appointments to talk to Eric. So he's become that important in driving this. So, and rightfully so, because it's fantastic.
All right, we've got a question real quick from Danny Birch, who sent this in, and I'm going to bring this up on our monitor here. And this is regarding what we call the backside of a really, it's kind of a walkout basement. So I'll show the picture here. So the viewers at home that are watching on YouTube TV will be able to see. Maybe not everyone will be able to see it, but if you are watching us or you're watching us on one of our social media platforms, you'll be able to see this.
The way you just said that, JV, it reminded me of the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland. The backside of water.
Yeah. And then I shoot a hippo right after that, right?
Exactly.
So Danny sent this to us, and this is the alpha side of the building, and we'll have this so all the viewers can see it. And the alpha side looks like it either might be a walkout or might be on slab. And then as you go around, you can look at the Charlie side, and the Charlie side of this and this is what Danny is asking is what would you call this structure from the Charlie side? What would you call it, Chris?
Yeah, so if I looked at this, I'm doing a 360. First of all, man, this is built on a heck of a slope, right? So that's why there's such drastic grade change between the alpha view and the Charlie view. So to me, this is 3 stories from the rear, right? So it's likely that lowest level where the man door is there, just to the right in the photo, is an unfinished basement. It would be my guess. And then the floor above, and then the floor above that, the second and third level looking from this side, and that third level being the street level from the alpha side. Those are obviously finished portions and living area of the home. So to me, that's 3 stories from the rear.
Josh, we get asked this question frequently on how we articulate 3 stories from the rear or 2 stories from the rear. Is that the regular vernacular that we would use with Blue Card?
Yeah, I mean, whatever people really in their own organization and in their area decide to call it is what they call it, right? I mean, it's like we don't say swamp coolers in Cincinnati, but we say, RTU units, rooftop units, pretty simple, and they call them, swamp coolers. So as long as everybody knows what you're really saying, and I think the way to fix it is go get a ton of pictures, and within your own organization, come up with, what do we call this? So it might be two stories on the Alpha side and 3 stories on the Charlie side, or 3 stories in the rear with a walkout basement. So it is 3 stories then on that Charlie side. Or you could say, like Chris said, this is 3 stories on the Charlie side, including a walkout basement. I mean, however you describe it is how you describe it. And, what really matters with that kind of terminology is that your organization and the people who you work with are on the same page with it. So, if you go to the East Coast, there's some other, different styles of basements that you're seeing, or cellar spaces, or, limited access going into, apartment buildings and all of that. And those places just have to, on their own, decide, what are we going to call this? What is this? What makes the most sense for us? And once you decide what you're going to call it, then everybody trains on that, and then everybody gets to be on the same page. I compare that to the swamp cooler and rooftop unit example, or what people call their hose loads, or any of those kind of things, right? Because it's describing something on the fire ground that isn't science. It's a building construction thing that may be unique to your specific area. The important thing that we talk about is actually communicating how many stories it is, and then if it does have a basement, because that's a game changer for us, and in our own area. This is we're in the 6-week window in our Cincinnati area of us not doing well with basements, and having some bad events. So we were just having a discussion the day before yesterday about all the dates right now, starting with Bill Ellison in 2001, dying in Miami Township in a basement fire. So, it's important that we, communicate that it has a basement, and then understand the risks involved with basements. And I know I've repeated myself 10 times, but I'm going to go back to it again. What you call it, I don't think matters as much as making sure that whatever you're going to call it is what everybody's going to call it, and that you define it and everybody is trained in that same way.
Yeah, I don't think there's a giant glossary of the official B shift or blue card definitions, right? There are certain things that are very, very important to us that we utilize in a standard way of common language, like nothing showing, smoke showing, working fire, defensive fire conditions. All 4 of those have very specific, clear definitions. But then when we get into these unique structures that are, local or regional, that like Josh says, come up with whatever the name for that is, and make sure that everybody knows what it is, and that's what everybody calls it, right? And so, yeah, my example is when we were teaching in North Carolina, the guys came up and asked us, what do you call these houses? So they've, on the coast there, they've got those houses on stilts, right? Because of the storm surge. And they're like, well, what would you call it? And I'm like, I have no idea. I've never seen a house like that. What do you call it? You have to figure out what that is. And when you call it a house on stilts, and everybody knows exactly what that is. So I don't know that we're going to be able to provide all the definitions for everything in the world, but that guidance that Josh is talking about, I think, is really important.
So today we have some audio from the Lincoln, Nebraska Fire Department. Josh, could you set the stage on what we're going to listen to today?
Yeah, so this fire happened about a month ago. I think it was February 19th, I'm pretty sure, in the midst of some pretty significant weather, what I would call significant weather, but for them, probably just, normal winter. I do believe it was well below zero, had been below zero for a while. So that little background just on when and like some weather condition things. It was in the evening. The wind seemed to play a little bit of a factor with it when we looked at some of the video from it. road conditions was clearly a factor. And Lincoln, Nebraska Fire Department, to just give a little background on them, they are very new into the system. So I consider anybody who has 5 years or less using the system new, but I think they're actually like really 2 years, I think, into it, and um, they're doing absolutely fantastic with the system. And when they started, they said we're going to use the system and we're going to use the whole system. And uh, something you mentioned earlier about the AAR stuff, they jumped right on that too. I think they have like 15 or so working fires in there that they've already completed after action reports on. And one of the things that I was super impressed with some of the communications that Eric's had with them is they communicated that some of their numbers, performance numbers based on the AAR, aren't where they thought they were. And their comment basically was, if we wouldn't have done this AAR, we'd have just moved on with it and thought we were doing fantastic. We get 100%. And because they're doing these AARs, they're like, man, we got some areas that we do really, really well, and we got some areas that we can improve upon. And my view from the blue card perspective is, they're doing fantastic anyway, and all of us can always work to improve. I mean, we live in that world, and I know people are tired of hearing that, but we're always trying to improve and do better, and put the best thing out that we can. So, in this case, the fire itself, well advanced fire, reports that the building was being remodeled, so a lot of the walls were open, which just contributed to a lot of rapid fire growth. Wood frame, balloon construction, probably 40s, 30s or 40s era, I would say, built homes, pretty close together. So when they arrived, the main fire unit was, from the Alpha side anyway, was 100% involved. And the dash cam footage from the battalion vehicle who got there first, the Bravo 1 exposure had 100% exposure from the basement windows to the peak of the roof, when the battalion got there. And then it just kept going from there. And then the Delta 1 exposure was not really even, well, it was an exposure, but it was already on fire also when the battalion got there. So they weren't pulling up on one building on fire. They were pulling up on one building fully involved, two other buildings that were pretty well involved, where the fire was on the outside and making its way to the inside. So as we listen to this, some things to think about is you might base your response and make a lot of your decisions and your experience on you're going to one house on fire, but when you're going to three houses on fire, you have three houses on fire. So your decision making and deployment and all of that is very critical for that first due company officer, because this is one of those cases of they screw it up and it's going to be, you might burn the block down. So in this case, the battalion did get there first and did a nice job setting it up. I'll just tell you, when I listened to it, the battalion was at max capacity, assigning companies. There was more work to do than he initially had companies to do work. But either way, I think did a fantastic job based on the factors, assigning companies, that ultimately resulted in, they kept it to those three buildings, which in this case is, really good. So I think, John, we can probably include, some of those clips, not the whole thing necessarily, but some of those clips when we put this up, and it's on, for those who are going to watch it on YouTube, could see some of the, conditions on arrival. So they did it. He did a nice job using the system. Didn't have he probably wishes that he had more command staff that could have supported him as the incident escalated. At one point in here, you end up hearing that the company officer gets assigned to be a division boss, but they had no choice. There were so many companies working, and not enough staff to fill those positions. So, yeah, that's kind of the lead into it.
So one thing I'd like to say before we get to that is this is a fantastic example of why we talk about having critical factor based incident assignments or deployment, right? How we're going to use our companies to deal with the problem, right? So you're showing up with defensive fire conditions throughout an entirety of a house, and you've got the Delta 1 and the Bravo 1 exposures taking off on all levels of those houses because of the auto exposure from the original one. So if we show up with our standard arrival based assignment system that the first engine does X, the second engine does Y, and the first truck does Z, that may not be applicable here, right? You literally have of defensive fire conditions in one place, and then you have areas where you're going to try and protect interior spaces on both exposures. So there's too much to talk about there with regards to that. So the IC, and this IC does a good job with it, has to make assignments based on the critical factors, and he's got some serious critical factors here on the front end.
Battalion 1's on location. I can't even tell how big the house is. It is fully involved. This will be first engine, go ahead and get a hydrant. Truck company prepare for defensive operations. Battalion 1's going to assume 25th Street Command will be in the defensive strategy. We've got exposures on both sides. Truck 1 clear, set up for defense. Engine 1's on location. We're going to tag the hydrant at Truck 1 pull pass. Truck 1, I want you to, I'm going to change your assignment, primary search of the Bravo 1 and Delta 1 exposures. Truck 1, primary search. 25th Street Command to dispatch. Give me a second alarm.
Receive second alarm, 711.
Engine 1, I want you to deploy your deck gun as soon as you can.
Truck 1, Battalion 1, which exposure? Alpha or Delta?
Start with the Delta 1.
Or Delta 1. Engine 7 Command, do you want us to come in off of Stack Street so we're coming in on the Charlie side of the structures? Truck 1 Command, law enforcement advises everybody's out of the Delta 1. Should we move the Alpha 1?
Move to Bravo 1. Move to Bravo 1. Bravo 1's starting to catch on fire.
Alpha 1.
25th Street Command to dispatch.
Go ahead.
You can mark water in the fire, give me Black Hills and LES, but then also send me a third alarm.
See, third alarm at 713.
Truck 1, Command status change.
Go ahead.
Primary all clear. The first floor, we need a line to the second floor of Bravo 1. It's breached and we have a bedroom fire.
Yep, I'll get you a line as soon as I can. Command to any units, any engines not on location yet. I need an engine to come in from the south. An engine to come in from the south off of J Street.
H3 to Command, that's where we're headed.
Command Engine 3, I want you to bring in another hydrant line.
Understood, hydrant line. Engine 7 Command, we're bringing in the hydrant line from 25th and J. We're coming in from the south.
Received. As soon as you bring the hydrant up, we need multiple lines off your rig for fire control.
Engine 7 received multiple lines.
Command all units, the original fire occupancy, the alpha occupancy is starting to collapse.
Truck 1 Command, status change, moving the third.
Receive, you're moving to the third.
Truck 1 Command, going to the basement. Block 1, 1, 2, and 3.
Received.
Charlie.
Command Engine 7, I want you to get your deck gun going. Get your deck gun going.
Water's coming.
Engine 2 is on location from the south, waiting assignment. Command Engine 2, I want you to come up to Engine 1 and stretch an 1 3/4 line off Engine 1. You're going into the Bravo 1 exposure. It's going to be the 2.5-story balloon frame house for fire control. Engine 2 clear.
Engine 3 on location on the south side, waiting assignment.
Command Engine 3, I want you to come up and stretch another 1 3/4 line off Engine 1 for fire control in the Bravo 1 exposure. The Bravo 1 exposure.
Engine 3 off Engine 1, Bravo 1 exposure.
Command to Truck 8, I want you to come up to the Delta 1 exposure. We're going to be offensive in the offensive in the Bravo 1, offensive in the Bravo 1, and offensive in the Delta 1. The original Alpha occupancy, we are defensive there.
There's off from Bravo 1.
Okay, receive Delta exposure.
Command to any LFR chiefs listening, I could use a third chief to the scene. Commander Truck 1, what's your current location?
Just exited Truck 2.
Receive. We should have 2 lines going into the Bravo 1 here momentarily, 2 attack lines.
Engine location, stage south.
Engine 1, Charger Orange.
Command to Engine 8, I want you to bring your crew up to Engine 7, work off Engine 7 for fire control on the Alpha occupancy as well as the Delta 1 exposure.
Understood.
Truck 8 Command.
Go ahead, Truck 8.
Truck 8 Command, we're moving to the Delta. Can you give us our objective?
I'm sorry, I want you to go to the Bravo 1, ventilation. Start working on ventilation.
Truck 8 receive Bravo, ventilation.
25th Street Command to dispatch.
Go ahead, command.
Send me a 4th alarm, and I want the 4th alarm rigs to stage on J Street.
Clear. 4th alarm, unit stage on J Street, 721.
Battalion 2 is on location. I'm going to try to get to your Charlie side, Chief.
Battalion 2, actually, what I need you to do is I need you to take charge of the Bravo 1 division. The Bravo 1 exposure, I want you to be the division supervisor for that.
Receive Bravo 1 exposure. Who do I have working for me, Chief? I think I got 8 and 1. I think Truck 1's inside.
Just wait, I need to confirm who you have working for you. Command Engine 7, how are we doing from the south?
We're getting a good knock on it, but I can't really see the extension yet on this. Delta 1 exposure. Truck 1 for 16 Engine 3.
Engine 9 is on location, 25th and M.
Last unit who just went on location.
Engine 9, 25th and M.
Why don't you get a hydrant line and go to the Charlie side. Get a hydrant line and go to the Charlie side of the incident for fire control.
Hydrant line on the Charlie side for fire control.
Command Engine 1, can you confirm your location?
Engine 1's on the Alpha Delta corner of the Bravo exposure. Fire attack.
All right, you're still exterior, just confirming that.
Correct.
Received. Command to Truck 1.
Engine 7 Command, Delta 1 structure has heavy fire on the Charlie side. We're going to need a line on the Charlie side, Delta 1 exposure.
All right, Engine 9 is making their way that direction right now. Command Engine 9, do you copy direct? Need a line to the Charlie side of the Delta 1.
Clear. We're still backing up out of 25th Street trying to get around the block.
Received. Command Engine 7, you may have to shut down a 2.5 line to get a line back there while Engine 9's getting into place.
Receive. First one Command. You need to recycle.
All right, I want you to recycle, but then as soon as you've recycled, I want you to get your aerial up for aerial operations.
Truck 5 location. We're at 25th and J.
Truck 5, bring your crew up. Leave your rig in staging, but bring your crew up to Truck 1 and get Truck 1 in operation for aerial operations.
Truck 5 understood. We're going to set up Truck 1.
Truck 1 Command.
Go ahead, Truck 1.
Engine 3 did an initial knock on the second floor. However, they had to bring the line back down to 1 because of heavy fire. We're going to need an additional line to the second floor of Bravo 1.
Received. You need another line in Bravo 1. Command Engine 2, Are you working in Bravo 1? You should be working in Bravo 1.
Engine 2, yeah, we're on the Bravo 1, hit the exposure.
All right, if you're not interior Bravo 1, you need to be interior. We've got fire on 2 levels.
Engine 8, command.
Go ahead, Engine 8.
We're at the Charlie side of the Delta 1 exposure. We do have fire inside the Delta 1 exposure.
Reese, can you make entry into the Delta 1 for fire control?
Yes, well, the transmission will go.
Command to Battalion 2.
Battalion 2 positioned outside Bravo 1 exposure.
All right, you have Engine 3, Engine 2, and Truck 8 all working for you. We've got fire on the first floor and second floor. You should have 2 lines going interior there. Truck 8's been assigned to ventilation. We do have a primary all clear of the Bravo 1. Your objectives are fire control.
Battalion 2 received 3s, 2s, Truck 8. 3s and 2s are working on fire control. Truck 8's ventilation. We're in the offensive strategy. It looks like there's some wilder on the fire right now.
Yeah, we are still, command all units, just an update, we are still offensive in the Bravo 1. We are offensive in the Delta 1. We are defensive in the original Alpha occupancy. Command Engine 9, do you have a hydrant line to the Charlie side yet?
Not yet. We're still trying to get a hydrant over here on 26th and K Street. We're going to have to come back through between some houses to the alley to get back to where you guys are at.
Reese, you just keep working on it.
Engine 1, command.
Go ahead, Engine 1.
Sure.
Command Engine 1, can you repeat?
Yeah, Engine 1, command. We do got some fire in the walls on the Bravo 1 exposure. We're going to use a chainsaw and start cutting it open.
All right, you need a chainsaw or you're getting a chainsaw.
I got one.
Sounds good.
Battalion 2 to command. I could use an on-deck crew eventually when you get one.
Command to Engine 10 or Engine 13, what's your locations?
Engine 13 arrived, 25th and J.
Engine 10's arriving. We're behind Truck 5, staging at 25th and J.
Command Engine 10, I want you to go on deck, Bravo 1.
Engine 10 received on deck, Bravo 1.
Engine 10, I'm going to have you go all in, replace Engine 2, then you recycle.
Engine 2's coming out. We have to change bottles.
Command Engine 13, I want you to go on deck on the Delta 1. On deck on the Delta 1.
Engine 13 received, on deck, Delta 1.
Command Engine 7.
Engine 7.
Are you in a position that you could become the Delta 1 Division Supervisor?
I am.
All right, I'm going to make you the Delta 1 Division Supervisor. You are going to have Engine 9, Engine 8, and you might have to help me out with who else is in that area.
I believe we're just going to have Engine 7, Engine 9, Engine 8 in that area right now.
All right, so you are the Delta 1 Division Supervisor. Anything you need for the Delta 1, go ahead and take care of it. We are getting Truck 1's aerial up to assist as needed. And I've got Engine 13, I believe Engine 13 coming up to you to be on deck.
Truck 1, command.
Go ahead, Truck 1.
Aerial's going up. We're going to need a water source.
Received, you need a water source.
Engine 30 command from Bravo 1 exposure.
Truck 1 command.
Go ahead, Truck 1.
We're going to shut down operations on the 2.5 off of Engine 7. We will then pull a supply line off of Engine 7 to supply Truck 1. Is that okay?
Yes.
Clear. Proceeding.
Delta 1 to Engine 9. Delta 1 Supervisor to Engine 9. Delta 1 command, I can use another crew for on deck. Engine 9, Delta 1. I need a second line to the second floor of the Delta 1 exposure. Engine 8's on the first floor right now.
Engine 9 clear. We're going to deploy our 400-foot to the second floor of the Delta 1 exposure.
Truck 8, I don't think you need to do vertical right now.
Secondary speed, no vertical. Designate to Delta 1. We need ventilation in the Delta 1 exposure. Receive ventilation, Delta 1 exposure.
Commander Truck 5.
Truck 5's with Truck 1. They're working on getting our line hooked up.
All right, I need one of you guys to break away and start working for the Delta 1 Division Supervisor, Cluthy. They're requesting ventilation. I don't care which crew does it, but let me know which crew can break away.
Truck 1 is going to go to Delta, Truck 5. Truck 5 is going to go to Delta.
All right, Truck 5 is going to Delta. Command to Delta 1 Division. Truck 5 is going to be working for you. They can help you with ventilation.
Receive Truck 5, Delta 1, help with ventilation. Bravo 1 Division to Command. You can declare Bravo 1 exposure under control. They're just checking for hot spots, doing hydraulic ventilation.
Bravo 1, I had face-to-face traffic. You said you got the fire under control in the Bravo 1?
Yeah, just working on hydraulic ventilation. They're going to do a primary all clear of the basement.
Received. So you got the fire under control in the Bravo 1.
Engine 2 Command, this is improved greatly from the Bravo exposure. We're doing a secondary search as well.
Delta 1 to Engine 8. Give me a can.
We are still in the first floor, Bravo 1, second row high. We're going to exit structure 43. He's going to come around.
Under coming aerial. Delta 1 received. Engine 13, I need you to take over Engine 8 spot on the first floor.
Engine 13 received.
Commander Delta 1.
Delta 1.
Just confirming, do you have Truck 5 or Truck 1 working in your division?
I got Truck 5 right now. They're reporting that it's not going to be a good idea for vertical ventilation right now. Our best bet's going to be horizontal. I'm considering we might need to be going defensive on this Delta 1 exposure right now. I don't know how much fire we got up in the upper attic.
Yeah, I have no eyes on it, so I'll defer to your judgment.
Delta 1, Supervisor, all years working Delta 1. I want you to exit the structure. We're going to go defensive on the Delta 1. I want a line in place to protect the Delta 2 exposure. I want a line in place for the Delta 2 exposure in case it starts coming out the window.
'25th Street Command, all units. We are going defensive on the Delta 1 exposure. Repeat, we are going defensive on the Delta 1 exposure. Everyone in the Delta 1, evacuate the Delta 1 structure and report to the Delta 1 Division Supervisor for a PAR.
Clearly, as you listen to that, ton of stuff going on. I mean, 3 buildings on fire, 1 defensive, 2 offensive. At the end there, they make a transition to another one that's like, we're not going to get ahead of this. And as I count, I think Battalion 1 and Battalion 2 had 13 companies working between 3 buildings, and then your strategic IC, he was like, I can't, like, you can't do it like that. The best person can't do it by themselves, right? So he ended up, using the Engine 7's officer to make them Delta, and you got to break it down, right? So it's still the system, right? And it might not be ideal, and it might not be textbook, but they did what they needed to do to working within the system and everybody understanding the system to get through it. So, I think right from the get-go, Battalion 1, painted a picture of, I have no idea how big this thing is because the whole thing's on fire, right? And that started it. And then Battalion 1, Engine 1, Truck 1 are all coming out of the same firehouse. So they were pulling up together. So they told Engine 1 and Truck 1 what he wanted them to do, right out of the gate, because they were arriving right there together. Very early on said that they were going to be defensive in that main fire unit. called for the second alarm like right away, because it's like, no, I don't have one house on fire. I have 3 houses on fire. I'm gonna go through resources, very quickly. And then shortly after that, after giving just 2 other assignments, called for the third alarm, and had a focus of getting truck 1 into the places that could be searched, where there could be savable lives in those 2 exposures, right? So originally assigned them to Delta 1. They came back, said, hey, police have already been in there. There's nobody in there. And then assigned them back over to Bravo 1. And then they got an all clear pretty quickly. And every time they changed floors, they gave a status change. So, that was a positive, because the strategic IC was tracking, okay, where have we been and what have we done? What have we accomplished? And then where is that company actually working? So once truck 1 came back, so we got a primary all clear of the entire Bravo 1 exposure, the whole focus and objective became fire control. So Chris, I know you got tons of input on this from what's happened already. So
yeah, so as I'm listening to this, and I'm putting myself in the shoes of IC number 2, Battalion 1. Well, he's technically IC number 1. He's the IC the whole time, right? He got there first. And so I'm thinking, all right, this is just like the scene from Talladega Nights, where he's got a full grown cougar in the rig that he's fighting off. Like, that's the way he feels. And so he's got a hell of a fire going in one occupancy that's consumed the entire occupancy. It's extended to the other 2 occupancies. So he's got to do something about starting to knock the fire down and knock the BTUs down from that fire going on in that middle house, right? The one under construction, so that he can actually start to get a hold of those houses, the extension on either side of him. And he's at a disadvantage because of the trees, the amount of fire and things. He can't see the Delta 1 exposure. So he's really got his hands full right now. And so I think where the decision making that was solid on the front end of this was, all right, well, I'm writing that center 1 off. I clearly need to start worried about life safety and then managing the fire in the 2 exposures, right? Getting that information about Delta 1. Okay, I'm not going to screw around with it anymore. The cops have been in there. I haven't had anybody in Bravo 1, so I'm going to start getting companies in there, and then the initial truck company that's searching in there, finding fire. It's actually breached through that the Delta wall of the Bravo 1 exposure. I know that's a weird thing to think about, but right, it's gotten in there, and so they've got fire in the inside. So they're working through all of this, and he's trying to plug companies in to start to put fingers in the dam because it's leaking from everywhere, right? And so I think he's doing a good job being able to do that. I'm going to say, and this is not a criticism of the Lincoln Fire Department, this is the value of having support officers helping IC, the strategic level IC, manage that. Because once he got people in places, he's talking and assigning probably faster than he can write, right? And that's a difficult, challenging thing. So having somebody that can actually support him with helping and coordinate his accountability for where he has companies inside. So again, that's not a criticism of them, but it's demonstrating the value of thinking about how, for any system, how you're actually going to do that. Because if we know anything, politicians resource us not to go to fires. We figure out where our gaps are when we actually go to fires with regards to resources. And so this is one of those times. I think he has a very clear understanding of trying to balance getting defensive water onto the center occupancy, the main fire occupancy, and trying to get lines on the inside. I felt his pain as he's trying to get folks to charge supply lines so that they get water going where they need to. And those take time. Sometimes as the IC, you're like, hey, that needs to happen way faster. Well, sometimes it can't happen faster. So I appreciate that on both sides. So when we get to the middle of this, he's starting to have a pretty reasonable span of control, and his incident action plan is starting to come together of trying to manage what's going on at Delta 1 and trying to manage what's going on in Bravo 1, and ultimately then puts Battalion 2 in the division boss role in Battalion 1, and then has to use a company officer to fill that division boss role in Delta 1. Interestingly enough, the guy who's probably the least or the most disadvantaged becoming a division officer coming off of a fire company to manage Delta 1, he makes a fantastic call of, hey, we are not fixing this deal, what's going on here in Delta 1. We know we already have an all clear. Let's write this one off. We're going to change from interior operations to exterior operations, and let me start focusing on the Delta 2 exposure. So now the hazard zone's expanding. The IC and the division boss's view has to start expanding, and to be able to try and manage this and keep it all their arms around the whole thing. So I really I appreciate the position that IC1 is in, and in trying to manage that, moving forward, and you getting the most out of his companies as they're going into being assigned.
Yeah, as we listen to this, it keeps running through my mind all the people who are like, well, shit, I can manage a fire by myself. I can manage a fire by myself. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we all can manage the 1,500 square foot house with a couple rooms off that gets solved with a couple hand lines, right? That goes perfect. But when you, how much work you can really do yourself, how much you can manage, how well you can keep up, how much your brain is going, probably faster than maybe even some of the things that were communicated. As you know, Chris, you can't possibly document all of those things, but he really did a good job. Though he was questioning himself, he was just wanting to verify, make sure that this is who I'm pretty sure this is who you have, just make sure that's who you have. And actually, every time that he said that, it came back and that is exactly who was in those positions. So, he was doing, really well with that. But that span of control thing is a real thing, right? So it's like he was getting, though he did a fantastic job, he was getting well beyond his span of control or anybody's span of control, right? Like it was 15 to 17 minutes into the incident before he was able to get on deck companies into place, because there was that much work to take place of assigning all those front end companies. So, yeah, I mean, that clearly they're on the same page. Clearly they understand and use the system. They were helping each other. I love the fact that it sounded like there was urgency, but there was no, like, this is out of control. There was no screaming. There was no, I don't feel comfortable, though. The strategic IC, I'm sure, did not feel comfortable, like, with all those companies, and like was, had some second thoughts of what was going on. And Chris, to go back to what you said, that the value of having somebody in the vehicle with you to do that support role is priceless, right? I mean, I can manage 3 companies standing on my head, both eyes closed, right? And it's like at a fire that stretched one hand line, but that's not going to happen here. So we have to have a system that can be the one hand line and grow all the way up to this, where at one point I think there's like 7 lines off, 2 ladder pipes, 2 deck guns going for 3 houses on fire. And it's like, there's a lot of attack positions. There's a lot of companies working. Yeah, so that was all I thought really, really good. And then, circle back around when he assigned Engine 7 officer to be in charge of Delta and asked them, he said, are you in a position where you could be Delta? And he said, yeah, I can do it. And they kept at it for a little bit, right? Assigned a couple companies. A company had to recycle. Let's get another company into there. And then, that reality strikes of, I'm responsible for this, right? And who better than the person who was there early on and can see this is not getting any better, as like you said, Chris, like, we are not going to win here. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to burn down the Delta exposure. So when Delta came back and said, hey, we're going defensive, and command didn't miss a beat and repeated, hey, yeah, we're going to be defensive in the Delta exposure. We're going to keep it from going to the Delta 2 exposure. And then, the division boss of Delta focus became the defensive incident action plan of, okay, Delta 1's now defensive, and my incident action plan is to keep it out of Delta 2. And even communicated that, right? Like, let's be prepared when it starts coming out these windows that the Delta 2 exposure doesn't, light off. So, from the beginning all the way through it is, it was organized, clear. He would have loved to have had probably 3 or 4 more bosses there, right? At one point, he even keyed up on the radio and said, call for help. Like, is there any other chiefs that can hear me? I could use some help here, right? So he didn't get that help right away. So he made the best of what he had with what he had, and assigned another person to fill that role. And the guy did, like you said, a fantastic job as the Delta boss. Made a great decision.
So the thought that we talk about regularly in training in the system is, are we doing everything right, or can we be doing everything right in case something goes wrong? So I always like to look back at these incidents I'm involved, whatever. Look back and go, okay, at these critical points, did we have ourselves organized and coordinated so that if Mayday happens, or, hey, priority traffic, we've got a victim, let's say in the Bravo 1 exposure, how are we situated, right? And I think for this big a problem as he had going on early on in this incident, he was as prepared as you could be with that level of resources to be able to mitigate that. And were they in the right positions? Did you have lines in place? And did you ultimately have crews on deck to be able to support that? And yes, it took a minute. And sometimes it's going to take a minute. But that's what we're striving for, right? That's what we're looking for. We're trying to organize our companies that way. So, and looking back at this, again, I'm feeling the pain of that IC. I know that feeling in your gut, and but he did a really good job of managing that, and in a calm way, and organizing and trying to put himself in the best position to not only fix the problem, but be ready in case something stupid happens.
I just want to circle back to is the how well they communicated we have primary all clears and you're just doing fire control. Like the IC and division bosses were very clear about that, because very early on they had all clears. So the focus is just fire control. So there was no confusion. The assignments lined up with your job is just that fire control. And that's the only problem that they had left, because life safety had been eliminated, right? They had addressed that. They'd taken care of that component of it. One other thing I just wanted to hit that I wrote a note on, and I went over it before. Sometimes people say at a fire like this, well, the second and third alarm, I thought in your system, the second and third alarm would go to level 2 staging. And it's like, well, the incident commander needed those resources to the scene. He didn't need them parked somewhere else. He had 3 buildings on fire, right? And really with 3 buildings on fire, he's going to end up probably using the resources like he had 3 separate buildings that might be a half a mile apart on fire. So the second and third alarm came, right to the scene. And then he made a decision when he called for the 4th alarm, had them go to a different location, to a staging location. So I just want to bring that up, because if when we don't, a month later, it comes up as a question. I thought in the blue card system, when you called for a second alarm, they went to level 2 staging. And it's like, well, that's all based on how many resources do I need to solve and do the work that I need to do, right now. So he had plenty of work to do on the front end of it. He wasn't calling the second and third alarm for replacing company. He was calling the second and third alarm to fulfill those initial assignments. So I just wanted to, bring that up and clarify that piece. So,
well, let me pile onto that a sec, Josh, because with what we were talking about with the support officer, he's not this IC working by himself with, again, the volume of work and the companies he needs. He's not in a position to actually manage pulling companies out of a level 2 staging location on another channel. He's doing everything he can to hold one channel together, right? So in our system, if you're going to use level 2 staging, right, that's how you use it. And so his work, the amount of work, and what he needed done, he maximized the system to actually be able to get him that. In a perfect system with support officers and piles of response chiefs and all that other stuff, could you make level 2 staging work? Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely could. That's not what they have, though, so they're maximizing what they have, which I think is an important thing. And the one thing I would like to ask, and I want to be real with our brothers and sisters here in Lincoln, is that one thing that I think that they can consider after this fire is the utilization of tickets to get on the radio. And it's not very prevalent at all, really, in this communication. There was so much communication here, and necessary. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary, but the tickets may have allowed the IC to triage some of that communication slightly better. Like in a more, if he was very much worried about the Bravo 1 exposure. And when there's conversation going on the radio of other things happening simultaneously, I'm going to try and shut some of that other stuff out so I can focus on getting the work and people in place in the Bravo 1 exposure. So that's just a blue card consideration for our folks in Lincoln is here's an opportunity to listen to that and say, okay, what happens if we would utilize tickets to get on the radio a little bit more effectively? Could that have made this organization and this communication a little bit better? That's just what I want to offer up to them.
Part of the continuous improvement. And we appreciate Lincoln for sharing that audio with us and letting us learn from it. That's how we get better. That's how other organizations learn, especially those that don't go to fires on a regular basis. They listen to this podcast, they pick up, they glean more information, and they're able to apply it on their next fire. So we really appreciate them sharing this with us. All right, you guys want to do a timeless tactical truth? Timeless tactical truth from Alan Brunacini, and today we draw the Queen of Hearts. Wow, that's a Juice Newton song, isn't it? Playing with the Queen of Hearts.
Did you play that? Did you spin that record, JV?
I actually went to a Juice Newton concert in 1983. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, Queen of Hearts. Regarding the command mode, no mature, refined, and reflective command system can be conducted in the open air that is crowded, noisy, smoky, and typically very confusing. Well, this audio that we listened to today, imagine if that was not being done from a strategic command post and someone had been roaming around on that fire ground.
First of all, as a guy from the desert, it looked unbelievably cold, and I don't think you could have made me get out of the car. And so I can't imagine trying to manage that in that environment, in that weather, in that and with the legit fire things that were going on there to do that. So, yeah.
We heard it once or twice on the audio where the IC heard some radio traffic but needed to verify, and he said, I need you to repeat that because I was face to face with somebody, right? So even in the car, because he was by himself, because there were so many companies there, right? I mean, there was that somebody, for whatever reason made the choice, I'm going to go over here and try to, have a conversation, or, cop or whoever it was. But you figure if he wasn't sitting in the car, then everybody that was outside would have had something to say. And when the closer you are to the incident, the smaller piece of it you're seeing. So, the best chance of the incident commander seeing, hearing, feeling the incident from 30,000 feet was sitting in that vehicle with it 70 degrees and trying to be as comfortable as he could with everything that he had going on, because he gets out of that car and gets anywhere near the sidewalk or closer, and you've lost scope of anything that you're looking at. And then we know as soon as you get out of the vehicle that you start missing radio traffic continuously, and we have so much of that from non-blue card system users that we listen to and have talked about, that every time that they say unit repeat, you just missed a mayday, and sidewalk command don't work. You know, the people, your response folks deserve for you to do your job as the incident commander and stay in your vehicle and listen, be an active listener and answer them when they call on the radio, and not be in the position of repeat your traffic, unit with traffic, any of that. And I always just jump right to, every time you have to say that on the radio, that was a missed mayday right there. So there's a reason why we operate in that position.
All right. Any closing thoughts, Chris?
No, I want to go back to the Lincoln thing. Thank you for sharing that. Right? It's when we start sharing things to the world, you're nervous, you're concerned, it's not like the fire service is very judgmental, right? So it's a big deal, and I greatly appreciate it, right? And that's a sign of an organization and a leadership that is actually interested in getting better. No, we're willing to talk about this out loud. We're talking about it out loud, and so we're trying to work on getting better. So I know they're that way, and I appreciate them sharing that.
I'll shore that up what Chris said with the, thank you to Lincoln for sharing what they shared, and thank you for everybody who shares their audio, because we all get better, because of it, because we get to hear incidents and we get to hear, well, it did happen. They did do this, right? It's not, some fictitious made up, BS that somebody's slinging around. It's like, this is the audio right from the incident. And thanks to them for sharing it, and we know that they're always looking to do better. And like I said, they're very new into using the system, but they clearly jumped in with both feet and are full steam ahead with it. And I know that I know Eric Phillips and a few of those other folks talk to them on a regular basis, and they're always looking at how do we improve, how do we do better. What tools are out there to help us do better. So,
yeah. So I've had the chance to talk to both fire chiefs independently, right? The from Worcester, the fire chief that was from the last audio that we reviewed. Now talking to the fire chief here, and when you see the fire chief, the ops chief, and you actually have to look them in the eye, and you have to have a real conversation with them about things, and you figure out how dedicated they are to making their organizations better. And the really cool thing is both of these folks have that. And that's, if you're a firefighter, having your boss care about you doing a good job and your organization doing a good job, that's a tremendous thing.
Thanks, Chris Stewart, for being here today, and Josh Blum, and thank you to the Lincoln Fire Department for sharing their audio. Until next time, thanks so much for listening to B Shifter.